Today we're talking with Claudia Malo, and the name of this podcast is Remembering the Ormond Hotel. And a little bit of a brief history of the Ormond Hotel it was built in 1887 by John Anderson and Joseph Price. Soon afterwards, in 1890, they sold the hotel to Henry Flagler, the famous industrialist. And he was also the founder of the Florida East Coast Railway, major developer of Florida's East Coast, all along the Atlantic coast of Florida. So Flagler turned the hotel into an extraordinary structure that included 3 new wings, a saltwater pool, elevators, and he also expanded the number of rooms from 75 all the way up to 400. He also built a railroad bridge over the Halifax River, which allowed railroad cars to stop right in front of the hotel. By 1905, the Ormond Hotel was a playground for the rich and famous, and it was known internationally. It was actually the largest structure in the United States made out of wood. It had 11 miles of corridors and breezeways, so it was a huge structure. Over the years, the hotel structure lost its appeal to wealthy travelers and was repurposed into a retirement hotel and eventually fell into a state of disrepair. On November 24th, 1980, the Ormond Hotel was actually added to the National Register of Historic Places because of its architectural significance. In 1986, the city of Ormond Beach ordered the evacuation of the building because of safety concerns. Over the next 6 years, numerous attempts to save and restore the hotel were put out there, but they all failed. Finally, in 1992, the Ormond Hotel was demolished. Claudia Malo is a lifetime resident of Ormond Beach area, and she remembers the hotel. And Claudia, what when you start out with the Ormond Hotel, what's the first memory of the Ormond Hotel that you actually have?
When we big coming to visit our grandmothers, and they take us to the beach, and as you cross the wooden bridge, go over towards the beach, and we knew once we got to the hotel, it was almost to the beach, and that's what our concern was: is go swimming and playing in the water and things like that. And then also walking down the river from my great grandmother's house on Dix Avenue in Ormond. It was just a block and a half, and we'd go down and do crabbing and fishing, and we could see the hotel. And then let's see, and then as we crossed the bridge, we could always see the people who lived at the Ormond Hotel on the veranda on the second floor. And they would be, rocking in their chairs. And then a lot of times we saw, I guess it was before my time, but they had a bridle path, a horse bridle path from the Ormond Hotel east to the beach. And that's where they would take the guests from there to the Ormond Hotel Annex, or whatever it was called back then, where it was like a beach house, where they had a pool, they had a dining area, they had a changing room, and they had a big porch around it. And when the guests would come, they would maybe spend the whole day there, and they would just sunbathe or just catch the breeze or watch the people on the structure and on the beach. And then downstairs at the Ormond Hotel, they had on the ground floor, on the east side of the hotel on Granada, they had a barber shop and a bar. And we always remembered looking for the barber sign, where it would twirl, and then we do. And of course, back then it was only a 2-lane highway. We didn't have 4-lane. So also when the 4-lane came, I can't remember what year it came, but they had to tear a part of the hotel down to make it where they could use the 4-lane, make it into a 4-lane. And it was real pretty at night with all the lights on the porch and all the residents' little apartments. So that's what I remember when I was little. And then as I get bigger, we used to pass it quite often to go into the beach on our bicycles. You know, we'd stop in there and talk to the residents just to catch our breath, and they would always offer us something to drink, you know, water, Coca-Cola, before we went on to the beach. So
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that they actually tore part of the hotel down to accommodate a 4-lane road like that.
yeah, they had to take a little bit off, not much.
Yeah, I know something similar happened with the Coquina Hotel down further there. When they put the A1A in, they had to do some reconstruction in that area as well. Claudia, when's the first time you actually stepped inside the Ormond Hotel?
Oh, that was probably when I was a brownie in the Girl Scouts. I'll tell my age, but anyway, they always encourage the groups of children to come because all the residents were older people and they didn't have their family, you know, with their grandkids and everything. So we used to go during the holidays, and we would just sing and talk to them and eat cookies and drink punch.
Well, that's great. So they like the neighborhood children, in other words, right? Most of the residents there at the time. Yeah, that's great. How lavishly decorated was the interior of the Ormond Hotel?
Well, the hotel, as you go inside, it had a desk, a big long desk for guests to come up and request going out, you know, bus drives or whatever, and to check in and check out. And then the floors were wooden, and they had real big aerial rugs, and they had couches all over and end tables with lamps on them. You know, just kind of fit into a square or something. And then they had tables also by the window where you could play cards, or you could do solitaire, play games, or just visit, catch a little bite to eat. And then on one wall, they had bookcases with all kinds of books in it, so people could read the books. And then, you know, and then you would go down the hallway to the dining room. And also, like the elevator, you know, it was to the right as you go in, and that was run, I think, by water or something. It was kind of a different setup to go up and down the stairs. Mm-hmm. And then the rooms were kind of different at the hotel, because you could get one bedroom and you shared a bathroom with your neighbor, your other room on the other side of it. Or you could get a room with a private bath. So that was kind of different. And it had, like, go in and it had the black and white tile, and then it had the tubs with the claws, which when they demolished it, that was one of the first things people wanted to buy, was those tubs out of the hotel. And and then I'm getting out of decorating the hotel lavishly, but to me, it was lavish because, you know, it was kind of amazing that people shared bathrooms that you didn't even know who they were. I mean, you know, they would be long-time visitors. Yeah. And then on their and back down to the reception or the living room, I think they had chandeliers hanging down, if I remember correctly. And the floors were dark. I know, wooden floors. So that's about all there.
Did they have, you know, any fancy woodwork in there, trim woodwork and all that, if you can remember?
No, I mean, they had I don't remember. I mean, it was just walls with the wood up on the side of it. And then,
So I understand you worked there at the hotel. What year did you start there, and what were your duties there?
well, I started as a summer job. That was my first job besides babysitting. And the first time I paid in Social Security. And it was in 1960. And I would drive over from my house, which is big. My mother's house is a mile away on the peninsula. And my duties were to work on the food line. So when the client, well, you saying client, when the residents would come in to eat breakfast, lunch, and supper, they would, we would have all the food in the tubs, and so they would come by and then they would have their plates, and then they give us the plates, and then we would put on what they wanted to eat for any meal. And then in the dining room, it had a lot of tables, that would seat 2, 4, 6, 8 of the residents, and they all had oilcloth tablecloths because it was easier to clean. And then the clients, excuse me, turn that off. Anyway, the residents would come in for breakfast, and then they would hesitate at in case you wanted cream of wheat or oatmeal. They had a discussion of that, and then they had eggs, pancakes, meat, toast, French toast, coffee, tea, And then if the person couldn't carry it to the table, we would assist them to put their plates, their dinner or lunch, supper on the table which they chose to sit. And then we had to clean up after them because they didn't take their plates and all off when they left. And then we would have to wipe it down and get it ready for the next meal. And I didn't work in the kitchen area per se because I was on the line because I was only 16. So, I mean, back in that time, we were not allowed to work in a place that had sharp knives.
It makes sense, right?
So, and when we went there to work, we had to park in the back of the hotel, which was off of Granada, and it was just up the bridle path went east, but then there was a fire trail that went up, which is now called the Halifax Road. And then we would come swing back in there and park, and then we would go up these gigantic stairs back in that time, wooden, and then we would pass the breezeway, and then they would have a big long table for the chefs to cook, to cut the vegetables or the meat before they prepared it, and then they would take it in, and then it had a dumbwaiter, a couple of them, and then in the kitchen. I peeked in the kitchen, but we were not allowed to do that. So I usually worked 3 shifts, but then it was you work 2-3 hours for each meal, 2 or 3 hours. So I was there almost all day.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Unfortunately, when the hotel got boarded up in the 1980s, do you think it really had any possibility of being saved or renovated back in those days?
Well, my thoughts were they should have been saved, like so many of our historical buildings in every town in the United States and the world. But, when I think Mr. Pepper was the last one that owned it, and he tried, but then I guess we just didn't step up the people that lived here to help. But I mean, I don't know when they had the termites. I don't know when they came into effect, but it's kind of hard to go beyond what the termites do with, the wood and everything. So, it was just a sad day for them when they said they had to tear it down and move the residents out of the hotel.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, it was really beyond economical repair at that point. It would have cost a couple of times more than what the building was actually insured for to try to even to try to renovate it. It was such a huge wooden structure that would have probably cost them the millions of dollars. And then you have to think what would have been used for, after that renovation. I mean, it was too big to have a community center in there, and somehow or another that building would have had to make money somehow. And that was another factor. What exactly was it going to be used for, if indeed it did get renovated, which obviously it did not. So that takes us to the next question here. What do you remember about the demolition of the Ormond Hotel?
What, Randy?
What do you remember about the demolition when they demolished it? What do you remember around the time when they demolished it, and what were people talking about during that period of time? This is 1992 now.
Yeah. Well, everybody was sad, and then they wished they'd somehow saved it. But I mean, each day that you would go in that area and you see a part of it that that they tore down, and before they tore it all down, they they took everything out of the hotel that they could sell, refurbished, and they had like a yard sale that you could come in and buy about anything that they could take out of the hotel. Chairs, buffets, fixtures. I didn't buy anything, but I mean, a lot of people did. So I mean, it's just devastating. But I mean, I guess they tried, but I mean, it's like so many other historical buildings, it's just always too late to do anything about them. Yeah,
and well, typically what happens is they let them get run down, and the more and more decrepit a building comes, the less and less likely it is going to be, put money in it to be restored. This is a common theme all over the United States. It's nothing unique to the Ormond Hotel. The good thing, I guess, is the cupola, the top part of the cupola, has been restored, and it's over there in Fortunato Park today and open to the public several days a week. And that kind of gives a lot of people, including myself, because I never saw it, and I was never in it, obviously, but to go inside the cupola makes you feel that you can almost get a feeling of how grand this place was at one time, and it's a good thing that the Ormond Beach area has that around. So another question here is, now it's more than 30 years that the building's been demolished. What do you feel about it today? But it's a memory. It's a memory, a good memory that most people, like you said, you didn't see it. But I mean, we used to go and the parades, Christmas parades would always stop there with Santa. And all the kids, liked it. And it was the front steps, which was changed. I don't know what year it was changed, in the late 60s, I think early 70s, into a concrete walkway up. But it used to be just wood, slat wood all the way up. And the kids always enjoyed that. And I mean, they had weddings, they had art. That was one of the first places that they used to have the art festival in Ormond. They used to have it on the bottom floor and top floor, and then that way you could go and see all the artists bringing their wares for sale. So. Yeah, that's interesting that they started a lot of the like Ormond today. The Ormond area is kind of known for art. art shows and artistic statues and things like that. So probably a lot of it got its roots there at the Ormond Hotel, especially with the wealthy clientele he had there in previous decades, And, one of the things that just kind of cropped into my mind is the story about the subterranean tunnel that went over there to the casements, the John Rockefeller home and the casements. And I did an article a couple months ago with a guy that worked at the Ormond for the city of Ormond and was actually in the remnants of those tunnels that went from the casements over underneath Granada probably into the hotel basement. When you were working there or just being a citizen of the area, do you ever remember any stories about those mysterious tunnels?
Not really.
Okay, yeah. A lot of people say they couldn't have been possible, but I know a guy that actually stepped into the remnants of one that's still underneath the front yard of the casements there. So, I mean, ending this podcast, is there any other memory that you might want to put out there that you kind of that jumped into your mind since we're talking about the Ormond Hotel?
Oh, there's many. You wouldn't have time to listen.
But any kind of unique story that might have jumped into your mind or something like that you might want to add to here?
No.
Well, I mean, thank you for showing up and doing this podcast. I know I learned a lot from you, and these are the type of things that are going to keep the history of these places alive. People talking about their personal experiences and research they've done, and in your case, firsthand experience of actually not just going in there as a child, but actually working in there later in your later days, as well. So I thank you again for helping keep the Ormond Hotel memory alive and giving people in future generations something to actually fall back on and kind of in their own mind relive it through your experiences. So thanks again, really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.